The man at the poolside was not just sick in his body, he had become sick in his expectations. His condition was no longer only physical, it had entered his mind, his language, his outlook, and even his interpretation of life. For over 30 years, he watched seasons change, watched people come and go, watched others receive miracles while he remained in the same spot. The poolside had become his address, his identity, his explanation, and eventually his prison. In the Gospel according to the Gospel of John chapter 5, when Jesus approached him and asked, "Do you want to be made whole?" the response should have been immediate, "Yes, Lord." But instead, the man began to explain his history. "Sir, I have no one to help me into the water when the angel stirs it." That is what long-term stagnation does to a human being. It converts simple questions into emotional biographies. The question was about possibility, but the man answered from pain. The question was about the future, but he responded from the past. That is the poolside mentality. The poolside mentality is when disappointment becomes your normal atmosphere. It is when delay becomes your identity. It is when repeated failure trains you to stop expecting change. It is when your mind becomes so accustomed to surviving that it no longer knows how to hope. Many people today are walking physically, but they are still sitting at the poolside internally. Some think freedom simply means there are no chains on their hands. But a person can move around freely and still be imprisoned. Some prisons do not have bars. Some prisons are made of fear, excuses, shame, trauma, rejection, inferiority, and hopelessness. Some people are imprisoned by what happened 10 years ago. Some are imprisoned by the betrayal of one friend. Some are imprisoned by one failed business. Some are imprisoned by one heartbreak. Some are imprisoned by the voice of society saying, "You cannot make it. People like you do not succeed. Nothing good comes from your family. Nothing changes in this country." And after hearing these things for years, they unconsciously spread a mat at the poolside and settled there mentally. The tragedy of the man was not only that he was immobile. The tragedy was that he had become comfortable explaining his immobility. There are people who can explain their stagnation perfectly. They know every economic problem, every political failure, every family disadvantage, every village conspiracy, every spiritual attack, every reason why things are difficult. But somewhere along the line, they stopped preparing for movement. That is why Jesus did not carry the man first. He challenged his willingness first. Do you want to walk? Because sometimes people become emotionally attached to the very condition they pray against. A man can become so used to begging that prosperity feels frightening. A woman can become so used to disappointment that healthy love feels suspicious. A youth can become so used to failure that opportunities begin to look like traps. And this is where many people are today. An opportunity comes and they say, "It's too good to be true." A helping hand appears and they become defensive. A new idea comes and they dismiss it because something similar failed years ago. They tried once and got hurt, so now every door resembles the door that wounded them. Anything that looks like a duck and walks like a duck must be a duck. That is the poolside effect. You can stay too long in one condition until your mind builds permanent accommodation there. You begin to speak hopelessness fluently. You begin to defend limitation passionately. You begin to glorify caution while silently dying inside. Meanwhile, life keeps moving. Others jump into opportunities. Others take risks. Others fail and try again. Others move despite fear. But the poolside mind waits endlessly for perfect conditions. It says, "When I know somebody that knows somebody, when my uncle abroad remembers me, when the economy improves, when the government changes, when someone helps me." Yet many destiny helpers themselves were once stranded people who decided to stand up. People celebrate the glory of destiny helpers but ignore their hidden story. The sleepless nights, the humiliation, the failed attempts, the sacrifices, the courage to move while uncertain. Nobody talks about the years they spent walking alone before they became the helper everybody now admires. Sometimes heaven is waiting for you to move before help appears. Notice something powerful. Jesus did not push the man into the water. He bypassed the system entirely. The man had spent years believing, if only someone can carry me into the pool. But the real answer to his life was standing before him outside the pool. Many times, we become so obsessed with one method that we miss God's greater possibility. You think your miracle must come through one politician, one relative, one visa, one contract, one connection. Meanwhile, God may be preparing a completely different route. The danger of the poolside mentality is that it limits God to your previous understanding. And perhaps the saddest part of stagnation is loneliness. The man said, "I have no one." Imagine the emotional weight of those words. For years he watched people rush past him toward their own healing. People touched the waters while he remained behind. Some may have stepped over him. Some pitied him temporarily. Some probably stopped noticing him altogether. That is what prolonged hardship can feel like. You begin to feel invisible. You can share spaces with many and still have nobody carrying your burden. But then Jesus came, and sometimes all it takes is one divine encounter to interrupt decades of stagnation. One moment, one decision, one act of courage, one shift in mentality, one yes. Because eventually Jesus said, "Rise, take up your bed and walk." Notice this carefully. The very thing that carried him for years became the thing he carried. The mat that once symbolized helplessness became evidence of victory. That is what God does. He turns testimonies out of former weaknesses. The thing that once embarrassed you becomes proof that you survived. But the instruction began with one word: rise. There are people waiting for motivation while heaven is waiting for movement, waiting for confidence before acting, waiting for certainty before starting, waiting for guarantees before trying again. But courage rarely comes before movement. Sometimes courage appears while walking. If this message speaks to you, then maybe you have been at the poolside too long. Maybe your poolside is fear. Maybe it is addiction. Maybe it is unemployment. Maybe it is self-pity. Maybe it is bitterness. Maybe it is endless comparison. Maybe it is spiritual laziness. Maybe it is the belief that nothing good can happen to you anymore. But hear this clearly. Your condition is not your conclusion. You may have been delayed, but you are not forgotten. You may have been ignored, but you are not invisible. You may have fallen before, but you are not finished. Every day, quietly and gently, God still asks, "Do you want to walk?" And many respond, "Lord, the economy is hard. I don't know. Anybody, things are difficult. Maybe this suffering is my destiny." But what if this is the moment to stop explaining and start rising? What if the next season of your life begins with a simple yes? Yes, I will try again. Yes, I will learn again. Yes, I will step out again. Yes, I will believe again. Yes, I will move even while afraid. Because when the master calls, explanation is not the answer. Availability is. So clutch whatever little still belongs to you. Your faith, your dream, your skill, your remaining strength, your tiny hope, your unfinished vision, and stand ready, because one encounter can change everything. The next time the Lord asks, "Do you want to walk?" do not answer from your wounds. Do not answer from your history. Do not answer from your disappointments. Just say, "Yes, Lord."
If the message appeals to you, kindly like so YouTube can circulate it further. Subscribe and hit the notifications button so you don't miss our next content. Share so others can learn, and comment so we know how to serve you better.